So tonight we're looking at part of the speaking test. Obviously, you know that there are 4 categories that you're marked on for speaking. Do you know what those 4 categories are? So pronunciation. What are the other 3 categories? Yep, grammar. If that's what you want to call it. Yep, sentence construction. So that's the second one. What's the third one? Vocab, right, grammar, vocab. And the last one is fluency and coherence. Fluency and coherence. So there are 4 categories that you'll be marked on. Each one is worth 25%. We've been looking at grammar structures the last couple of weeks and what it means to do well in the grammar section of the speaking test. It's not very clear, is it? Okay. All right. So if you're not familiar with the Ielts band descriptors, here is something that you can find on the internet very easily. There's plenty of places to find this. But this is just looking at the grammatical range and accuracy, which is the same as the grammar section. And you can see at the top there with a band 9, you would need to use a full range of structures naturally and appropriately, and you would need to produce consistently accurate structures, so no mistakes basically, for a 9 in grammar. Okay, that's why we never look at doing a 9. We're always looking at doing an 8, because some of the students are able to, you know, to speak very well, and their grammar is very good. A slip is something that a native speaker does even when they're speaking their own language. So, for example, a slip could be something like a subject-verb agreement, for example. A subject and verb agreement slip might be just for example, they goes instead of they go. I mean, it doesn't happen very often, but usually with a slip, right, the person is able to correct themselves straight after. So you can make a mistake, but then very quickly you recognize that you've made a mistake and then you correct yourself. So that's basically what a slip is, and people make them all the time, but not so much with grammar, but yeah, occasionally with vocabulary, I would say. So that's what a slip means. All right, so looking at band 8, we have uses a wide range of structures flexibly, produces a majority of error-free sentences with only very occasional inappropriacies or basic non-systemic errors. So a non-systemic error, is one that you make only once or twice. Okay, that's what a non-systemic error is. So for example, looking at the example that we did before, if you said they goes and you actually wanted to say they go and you only did it one time, then that's what's called a non-systemic error. So it means that it only happens once or twice, and then you don't repeat that mistake again. Okay, so for a band 7, it's a range of complex structures with some flexibility, and then frequently produces error-free sentences. So that would mean more than 50%, maybe less than 80%, although there are still some mistakes. So does everyone see the difference between a 7 and an 8? Can everyone see the difference between a 7 and an 8 with grammar? Just type your answer in the box, or I'll just pop it there for you. With a 7, you can make mistakes. With an 8, there are few mistakes with grammar. Does anybody know what their level of grammar is and whether or not they make mistakes? Do you know if your grammar is good or not? Occasionally. You don't know. Okay, that's really interesting, isn't it? I guess it's hard to know. You think yours is good. That's good, Natasha. Well done. I guess the only way you're going to know if your grammar is good or not is if a native speaker listens to you, or an English teacher listens to you and is able to indicate whether or not you have a lot of errors. So it would be worthwhile trying to find, I don't know if you're learning English at the moment or you have a private tutor, but it's a good way to find out what your grammar is like, whether or not you're a 7 or an 8, and what mistakes you're making and how you can improve them. Okay, so that's something that I think everybody should try and do in their own time, is to try and work out what their grammar level is. Okay, so just looking here again, we've got 9. 9 is something that we never try to aspire to. 8 is something that some people are interested in trying to get. 7 is usually our medium range, right? Because most people are 7 or a 6 or a 5, and sometimes even lower. Okay. So my first question is, what do we mean by structures? What are structures? Remember, in the rubric, it talks about structures a lot. Structures. What are structures? Anybody know? A good flow. Okay. All right. Good flow. Formation. Okay. All right. Well, actually, structures are nothing to do with flow, and they're nothing to do with paragraph linking. Yes, it's all to do with your sentence types. So structures means sentence types. And what I mean by sentence types, tenses, all right? So when you're using different tenses, when you use relative clauses, modal verbs, complex sentences, passive voice. So these are just a few of the many structures that we have in the English language. So it's basically all to do with sentences and what is in the sentence in terms of what verbs are there, what pronouns are there, the different types of verbs, modal verbs. So it's all to do with what's in your sentence. It's not vocabulary, it's basically grammar. Is that clear for everybody? Natasha, all good? Okay, thanks. Okay, so today we're going to look at how our candidate uses complex sentences in their long term. Sorry, I've missed a word there. I shouldn't have uses complex sentences in their long term. And so today we're focusing on complex sentences because it is the indicator of a good competent speaker in English. Simple sentences and compound sentences are basic, and we never use those more than, let's say, 20 or 25% of what we're saying. Our structures are a mixture of simple, compound, and complex, which means that if you are able to use some complex sentences, then your score will be higher. Okay, so what is a complex sentence? A complex sentence uses an independent clause plus a dependent clause, and I'll explain a little bit more what this means. But does anybody know, has anybody ever heard of the word independent clause? Yes. Okay. Yes. You think you can explain it, Natasha, an independent clause? Oh, okay. All right. No worries. No worries. Okay. Well, an independent clause means an independent clause can stand on its own. A dependent clause, also known as a subordinate clause, cannot stand on its own. Okay. So what I mean by an independent clause is something like this. Okay, so my independent clause has a complete thought in it. So we've got a subject and a verb, and then obviously the punctuation is a capital letter and then a full stop. So that's a complete sentence, all right? So an independent clause means a complete sentence on its own. Does that make sense? Does everyone understand? Now, oh, sorry. I haven't posted it. Last night I taught Ielts at Future Ed in Henderson. So it's a complete sentence, a subject and a verb, and it makes sense on its own. Does everyone understand that that is a complete sentence? Everyone understand? Okay. Now I'm going to show you what an incomplete sentence looks like, or a dependent clause. So this is now, I've added something to my sentence. And you can see that it's not complete. Can you see that is not a complete sentence? Why not? Right, well done. Yeah, so it's incomplete and it will depend on what follows. So we need more information, right? So that's what's called a dependent clause. All right, so a subordinate clause, just looking at the screen, subordinate clauses are sometimes known as dependent clauses because they need the main part of the sentence to make sense. They don't make complete sense on their own. Just like my example, when I taught English last night, it doesn't make sense. It has no context. Okay, so our example here is George wanted to stay outside despite the driving rain and wind. All right. Now, can you see that this first part of the sentence that I'm underlining here, George wanted to stay outside, is that a complete idea? What's underlined? Is it a complete idea? Yes. Okay. Okay, yes it is. Well done. It is a complete sentence and a complete thought. Now, if we look at the other part of the sentence starting with despite the driving rain and wind, Is that a complete sentence or a complete thought? No. Okay, so the part where it says despite the driving rain and wind is what we call a dependent clause because it depends on the other part of the sentence. Okay, so what you have here is a complex sentence. George wanted to stay outside despite the driving rain and wind. Does that make sense? This is what we call a complex sentence. And so this is a key part of having grammar competency. All right. Any questions? So just here, the subordinate clause, despite the driving rain and wind, does not make sense on its own and is adding extra information to the main clause. So sometimes a subordinate clause or a dependent clause adds more information to the main clause to give us a better picture of what they're trying to say. So why do we use complex sentences? Why do we use subordinate clauses? Because it's an effective way to add more detail to your writing or speaking, to add more detail. All right, now let's have a think about subordinate conjunctions. Does anyone know what a conjunction is? Joining word. Well done. Okay, a conjunction is a joining word, like a helping verb. Not a verb. It's not a verb. It's like a preposition. It's like and or but. It's actually just called a conjunction. So and or but or so or for, or even what we've been looking at, despite, although, all those words which join two parts of a sentence together. So a subordinate clause, which we've been looking at here, usually begins with a subordinate conjunction such as although, because, even though, despite, when. And there are many, many more, but we'll just look at those ones tonight. This type of conjunction signals to the reader that this part of the sentence is adding additional information to the main part of the sentence. Okay, so remember, complex sentences have one thought or one idea plus added information. The subordinate clause can go at the start. Oh, sorry, it's not a clause. It's oh no, hang on, no, that could be right. Sorry. Let me just get my eraser. Where's my eraser? Oh, okay. So the subordinate clause can go at the start, in the middle, or at the end of the sentence. So if we have a look here, we've got in the bold, even though it was getting dark. So that's at the beginning of the sentence. The independent clause comes after it. Sam wanted to go for a walk. Or we can put it in the middle. Sam, even though it was getting dark, wanted to go for a walk. Or at the end, Sam wanted to go for a walk, even though it was getting dark. So you see, subordinate clauses can go at the beginning or in the middle or at the end of a sentence. Okay, let's have a look at what it says here for note. A subordinate clause, remember, a clause that cannot stand on its own, may also be introduced by a relative pronoun, a word like that, which, who, or whose. So for example, Sam, who didn't like the dark, stayed at home. Okay, so just to recap, complex sentences must have, can you tell me? What must they have? Okay, a conjunction, all right. Well, it can be a conjunction or it can have, no, so don't worry about the conjunction part of it. So at the beginning I was explaining about dependent and independent. Yes, yes, yes. That's it, you Praj. Dependent clause and an independent clause. That is the formula for a complex sentence. It's an independent clause and a dependent clause. Don't worry about the conjunctions or the prepositions. That's not what the formula is. The formula is independent plus dependent. Okay, let's have a look at a candidate's answer who got a band 8. So first of all, we're going to have a look at their prompt for part 2. Describe a famous person that you know about. You should say who this person is, what kind of business this person is involved in, what you know about this business person, and explain what you think of this business person. Okay, so tonight we're only really looking at complex sentences. And so what I've done here is I have highlighted in brown one part of the sentence and highlighted in blue another part of the sentence. And I'm wondering whether you can tell me which is the independent and which is the dependent in the first example. Which one can stand on its own? Which one does not make sense on its own? Good. Light brown one can stand on its own. So that part is, what do we call that part, you Praj? Starts with I. Good. Independent. Well done. And the blue is called what, Natasha? Good. Okay. So complex sentences always have one of each. All right. So what's he saying about his business person? There are many successful business people in my country of national prominence who have made a great stride in moving the economy forward. So this is extra information in the blue, isn't it? He's first of all saying that there are many successful business people in his country. And one such person is Mr. Rahman, and he's going to talk about him. So moving on, we've also got more examples of complex sentences. In the light brown, we've got the independent part. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to suggest that Mr. Rahman is the pioneer of all kinds of modern furniture in my country, who actually started his journey about 50 years ago by starting a timber industry. Can someone tell me what this is called in the red? What type of word is that? Not quite. Yes, it's a reference to him. It's called a relative pronoun. It's called a relative pronoun. So remember our relative pronouns? If we go back here, we'll see we can have relative pronouns such as that, which, who, or whose. So in this case, it is referring to a person and it's who. So these can also join, so relative pronouns can join complex and, independent and dependent clauses. Okay. Have a look at this sentence that I'm going to put in the box. Can you tell me if it's a complex sentence in the box in the black? Yeah, good, it is. Can you tell me, if I put a mark and a divider there, so that part is one part, right? Can you tell me what word they have used? Good. Which word have they used which starts the dependent clause, the subordinate clause? Which word? Yes, especially is the word. Okay, so you can see that even words like this can be used as subordinate conjunctions. Okay, so this part of the sentence cannot stand on its own, especially for a person with little capital and assets. So can someone tell me what a dependent clause does? What does a dependent clause do? Connect. It. Not quite sure. Okay. Yes, it gives more information. So it adds more information. It adds info to the main clause. All right. Okay, so just moving through the answer there, and we'll come to another example. Today, with more than 25% market share of furniture products of my country. Okay, so which part is dependent and which part is independent? Which part is dependent? Yeah, a brown is dependent or blue? Which one can stand? Yeah, brown is independent. So brown can stand on its own. Why can the blue not stand on its own? What words in there make it incomplete? What's wrong with the blue? Why is blue not complete? What's it missing? Blue is missing something. Yeah, it's incomplete. It's missing what? Right. But the main thing is, where is the verb? There's no verb. Right? So every sentence must have a verb. Every complete sentence must have a verb. So we've got no verb in the blue part. So that's another thing. A subordinate clause doesn't always have a verb. Okay? Everyone clear about that? Any questions at the moment? Okay. All right. Okay, so let's look at the next example. I have heard a great deal about this visionary business leader of my country, but what impresses me the most about him is that he still works 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. every day, just like a regular person. So this sentence, do you think it's complex or simple or compound? Compound, complex, or simple? Remember what we need to look for a complex sentence? A dependent and an independent clause. So do you think it's complex? Okay. Why not? Why is it not complex? Remember, complex must have dependent and independent. Okay, so why is it compound? The answer is compound. Why is it compound? What is compound anyway? What does it mean? Compound sentence is two complete sentences joined by a conjunction. So in this case, what's the conjunction? Where's the conjunction in this sentence? Yeah. Okay, so but is a conjunction. So this first part of the sentence ending at country is a complete thought, a complete idea. And then starting here from what impresses me the most about him is also a complete sentence. So what we have is two complete sentences joined together by a conjunction, and this is called a compound sentence. And these are just as useful. Yep, compound sentences are also very important. Okay, so don't think that it's just going to be complex sentences that you need to use. You do need to use a mixture of compound and complex. Okay, so having a look at the next example, he's happily married with 5 children and lives a rather simple life for such a rich and successful person. Okay, so big question now, is this complex or compound? Starting from here. Is it complex or compound? It's interesting, isn't it? Do you think that, okay, so we divide it here, right, where we've got this conjunction and. Okay, so this first part is definitely independent. He's happily married with 5 children. Okay, that's a complete sentence. What about this part? Lives a rather simple life for such a rich and successful person. Is this a complete sentence? What's it missing? Very good. The second half is dependent. So what's it missing? What word is missing? There's a word missing or a type of word. He, that's right, he. The actual subject is missing. So we can't say that this is a complete sentence. So therefore, this whole part of the text is not compound. It's complex. Is that clear for everybody? Compound must have two complete sentences. All right, so let's look at the final one. Anyway, to conclude, I think that Mr. Rahman is indeed a very hardworking person who is passionate about his work and business. Otherwise, he wouldn't really be able to come up with such beautiful furniture. So once again, guys, is this complex or compound or simple? Are you sure? Remember, compound is 2 complete sentences put together. So where does it end? Where does the first part end? It ends there, doesn't it? I think that Mr. Rahman is indeed a very hardworking person. That's a complete sentence. That's independent. Yeah, that's right. Okay. All right, yeah. So the part in the blue, starting with this pronoun who, then makes it a complex sentence. Okay, so, you know, it's hard to sort of, you know, I mean, what's the difference between a complex and a compound sentence? Well, oh, I see. Starting from otherwise. Otherwise, yeah. If we were just to say he is passionate about his, no. So what is a simple sentence? Okay, that can we just start with Upraj's question, starting from otherwise. Otherwise, he wouldn't really be able to come up with such beautiful furniture. So starting from otherwise up to there, that is a complete sentence, Upraj. Yeah, it's a complete sentence. But what we're looking at for our incomplete sentence is this part included as well. So that all that's in the blue. So there is a condition. It's not really about conditions. It's basically just what makes this a dependent clause is this pronoun at the beginning, who. Because basically, if we were going to stop the sentence here and make a new sentence, we would have to say the subject have to say he. He is passionate. Okay, so basically, because we don't have the subject and we've got the relative pronoun instead, it becomes a dependent clause. I'm not sure if I'm explaining that very well to you, but you know, basically what you've got to look at every part of the sentence, can the ideas stand on their own? So if we were going to divide it here, would the rest of that sentence would it make sense on its own? And the answer is no. You wouldn't say just randomly, who is passionate about his work and business? We wouldn't understand. So the whole part in blue is dependent, but starting from otherwise would be independent. Does that make sense? For you, Upraj, does it make sense? Okay. Okay, so your question now is, what is a simple sentence? So a simple sentence usually just has can have more than one subject, but we might say one subject plus one verb. He likes ice cream. Okay, he likes ice cream. One subject, he, and then one verb, likes, and then the object, ice cream. But we could also have Sarah and Paul go to the gym and exercise. So Sarah and Paul go to the gym and exercise has got two subjects, Sarah and Paul, and then it's got two verbs. We've got go and we've got exercise. But that whole thought, that whole sentence there is complete, and there's typically, so it's not a compound sentence because there's no other sentence in it, and it's not a subordinate. There's no subordinate clause either. Does that make sense? So it's basically just one idea. Sarah and Paul go to the gym and exercise. So going to the gym and exercising is sort of like the verb part of the sentence, but it just happens to have two verbs. A more simple example might be the class starts at 9. That's a simple sentence. However, if we say the start, oh, sorry, if we say the class starts at 9 and finishes at 10. The class, oh sorry, I put he. The class starts at 9 and finishes at 10. That's also a simple sentence, because it's really just got one idea in it, one thought in it. Are there any questions at the moment? It can be a little bit confusing, actually, simple sentences, but I wouldn't worry too much at this point about, wouldn't worry too much about simple sentences, guys, and don't worry about the language of simple or compound or complex. Just try to be aware of, you know, what are your sentence types. So a little bit of a summary is that the candidate uses a mixture of simple, compound, and complex sentences. Their complex sentences always add extra information to the main idea in each sentence. So a little bit of practice for you to do at home. I'd like you to write out a script or record your voice on your phone, your response to the same question about a business person. Can you write complex sentences? If you are only able to use one or two, this shows some limitation in your flexibility and may limit your score. So the challenge is for you to write out or record on your phone a 2-minute talk about this topic of a business person. So you should say who this person is, what kind of business this person is involved in, what you know about this business person. And what we're going to be focusing on really is, what are your sentence types? Are you using complex sentences? That's the challenge for your homework, okay? When I say homework, I don't mean it like I'm going to be checking it, but it's just something for you to challenge yourself and do a little bit of self-regulation. Do you all understand? Yeah, okay, good. So is this new information for you about complex sentences? Is it new information? Yes. That's right, Natasha. Complex gets more marks, yes. Let me take you back to the rubric that we looked at the beginning. No, well, it has to be a combination, Natasha. So I guess what we're looking at is complex are the hardest ones. So in the rubric, it says, in the rubric for an 8, it says wide range of structures. Okay, so what we've looked at tonight in our structures is we have looked at complex sentences. Okay, so complex sentences is the hardest thing to do out of all the sentence types, such as simple sentence, compound sentences. Yes, you can definitely use them. You have to use them. It's just natural. But if you can use complex sentences, then the examiner is made aware that you have more ability in the grammar category, okay? Because this is just grammar that we're looking at, remember, and they're only talking about structures, and then they're talking about the amount of errors that you have. So when you're thinking grammar, you're thinking two things. You're thinking errors. Do I have a lot of errors? And you're also thinking, do I use a variety of structures? And what we've looked at tonight is only one type of structure, and that is the complex sentence. Okay, so there are other structures as well that we can look at next week and the week after, such as modal verbs and passive voice. Does that answer your question, Natasha? Oh, sorry, no, Upraj. I was maybe answering the wrong person. Okay, so yes, grammar, Grammar is all about variety, and it's about the errors that you make. Are there any questions? Good for now. So will I see you next Wednesday? You're welcome. Will I see you next Wednesday night for 2 lessons, okay? Would you like to have some listening lessons as well? Listening? Okay, yeah. I need to work out whether we can do that for listening because of this big blue button. I'm not familiar with the audio part of it. So I'm going to ask, yeah, I would like to start doing some listening lessons as well. Okay, let me talk to the manager here and see if we can, and the skills for scoring for listening. Yep, absolutely. Joanna, yeah, I'll type it in the box. Some question and answer, definitely. We can even do just one session on question and answer. That's a great idea. Remember that the listening sections are not marked by examiners. It's all done kind of on a computer. So they're basically just letters and numbers and a few short words. So, but definitely I can help you with listening and definitely can help you with questions and answers. And I'll talk to my manager to see if we can actually run some proper listening lessons. Okay, guys. Well, lovely to talk to you and see you tonight. 106 minutes. Okay, so I'll see you next Wednesday. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye for now.